Okay.
Check, check. Okay. Okay. All right, good evening, everyone. Call tonight's meeting to order for Wednesday, February the 1st, 2023. If you would, call the roll, Mr. Metz.
Gary Gross,
Here?
Jim Hall,
Here.
Todd Moore,
Here?
Christopher Ambergy,
Present.
Jerry Heidenreich,
Here.
David Cash, and Stefan Wanamaker.
All
You
right.
have quorum.
Thank you. Before we get started, have a new member. Just like to welcome Stefan to the BZA. Nice to meet you. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is our minutes from December 7th, 2022. Have you had a chance to read the minutes? Any questions or revisions to the minutes?
I have one. Wasn't Dan Ward in that meeting in December? He's not listed up there.
On page 1, it shows that you said Dan Ward was not there?
No, he was there. Oh, wait a minute. You know what? I'm looking at the wrong page. I'm sorry. Forget that.
He's there.
Yeah, he is.
Okay. Any other revisions, changes, corrections? If there are none, do we have a motion to accept the minutes?
Make a motion, we accept the minutes as written.
Second.
Jerry Heidenreich,
I'm going to say yes, so we get 4 votes.
Christopher Ambergy,
Yes.
Todd Moore,
Yes.
Jim Hall,
Yes.
Gary Gross.
Yes.
Okay. All right, this brings us to our first case this evening. Before we get started, I have to swear in Mr. Metz. State your name and address for the record.
James Metz, City Planner, 1 Dunham Plaza.
You swear the testimony you're about to give to the board is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Well, this is case 123, a request by applicant Mark Quinn with U-Haul for approval of an area and dimensional variance for the property located at 230 South Verity Parkway. And Mr. Metz, I'll let you go with the rest of the description.
So our first application of this year is a request by applicant Mark Quinn, who is present, with U-Haul for an approval of an area and dimensional variance for the property located at 230 South Verity Parkway. The property is zoned B3 General Business District. The 2 variances requested are for a reduction in the setback from the residential neighborhood from 100 feet to 25 feet and for the construction of self-storage units without a fence surrounding the entirety of the property, where the Middletown Development Code states all self-storage facilities need to be completely enclosed by walls, fences, or buildings. So as you can see, the property is zoned B3. The purpose of the B3 General Business District is to provide for intense commercial and office development in close proximity to the interstate, high-volume streets that can provide needed goods and services to residents of the city, region, and beyond. Such district is most appropriately located adjacent to freeway interchanges and along major streets. So this is a project that's been a very long, ongoing project that U-Haul has had with the city. There was an initial contract written up, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, where it's been going back and forth. And it's been bouncing around back and forth with city manager's office, economic development, and U-Haul. We finally came to a conclusion. I've included kind of like a timeline of everything that's happened, but it's been way since before 2021. There's also an ordinance 02018 that allowed for U-Haul to build self-storage units on this property. It has the development committee's recommendation to approve this. This is what it would look like. This is the site plan. Essentially, what he's here for today is the expansion of self-storage facility, which is a reduction in setback from 100 feet down to 25 feet. And then all self-storage facilities have to have a fence surrounding the whole entirety of the property. But on the side that's eastbound, near Verity, they would like to have the fence withdrawn, no fence, so you'll be able to easily see onto their property. If you have any questions for me, I can answer them. Per the Middletown Development Code, the requirement for legal notice for appeals requests and meeting notice letters for the proposed appeal were sent to all property owners contiguous and directly across the street or public right-of-way. No comments were received. The following factors shall be considered and weighed by the BZA to determine practical difficulty. Whether special conditions and circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land or structure involved, which are not applicable generally to other lands or structures in the same zoning district. Examples of such special conditions or circumstances are exceptional irregularity, narrowness, shallowness, or steepness of the lot, or adjacency to nonconforming or inharmonious uses, structures, or conditions. Whether the property in question will yield a reasonable return, or whether there can be any beneficial use of the property without the variance. Whether the special conditions and circumstances are a direct result from the actions of the applicant, his or her agents, or prior property owners. Whether the variance is substantial and is the minimum necessary to make possible the reasonable use of the land or structures. Whether the essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered, or whether adjoining properties would suffer substantial detriment as a result of the variance. Whether the variance would adversely affect the delivery of governmental services such as water, sewer, electric, refuse pickup, or other vital services. Whether special conditions or circumstances exist as a result of actions of the owner. Whether the property owner's predicament can feasibly be obviated through some method other than a variance. Whether the spirit and intent behind the code requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by granting a variance. Whether the granting of the variance request will confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by this regulation to other lands, structures, or buildings in the same district. No single factor listed above may control, and not all factors may be applicable in each case. Each case shall be determined on its own facts. Any person or entity claiming to be injured or aggrieved by any final action of the Board of Zoning Appeals has the right to appeal the decision the Court of Common Pleas as provided in the Ohio Revised Code chapters 2505 and 2506. Once again, just to recap, the city and the development committee has been working with U-Haul to develop this land based off of a contract that's 4 or 5 years old at this point in time. The new self-storage facilities would have code-approved building materials, code-approved in all other aspects other than the 100 feet from residential neighborhood, which there would be a privacy fence along there 6 feet tall and 100 feet from the residence, so
Would you repeat
residential
that?
dwellings. Sorry.
That last bit, would you repeat that, please, about the privacy fence?
Yeah. So all self-storage facilities are permitted within this district, and they're permitted with standards is what we call it in our development code. It would require a 6-foot tall privacy fence, so an opaque fence, not able to be seen through between surrounding all sides of self-storage facilities. So one of the requests is to remove the fence. I believe that's 2nd Avenue, so the north side, then on the side that's along Verity. And then additionally, all self-storage facilities have to be 100 feet from any residential dwelling. So not the property line, but the dwelling itself, the home. They would like to reduce that down. I believe it's to 25 feet, but that is, once again, while they're here. Does that answer it?
Yep, that more than answered. I just didn't catch what you said about the privacy fence.
I got a couple questions. I am concerned about, there's no fence at all on the, what you said, 2nd Street and Verity Parkway side of the property? Is that true? No fence at all?
Well, there's no fence currently right now.
Yeah.
And any self-storage facility that's built based off of code requirements, there would need to be a fence along the northern portion of the site, and then on the eastern side, which is where Verity would be, there would have to be a fence surrounding the entirety of the self-storage facility. However, they're wanting an area and dimensional variance to remove the fence there. That way, anybody driving by would be able to see through and onto the property, as well as this is a major corridor in and out of the city.
Okay, the question, I guess, comes down to there's different style fences. And I heard you say that it's not supposed to be seen through, and I think that's probably good relative to the homes behind the property. However, I would be concerned if there's no protection or from a fence, similar, let's say, Brill Avenue has lots of storage units. They all seem to have chain link fences with barbed wire on it. I didn't measure them, but they look like they're 6 feet tall with barbed wire on there. Is there an objection at this point to doing that?
Well, I'll let the applicant speak. When you do open the public hearing, I'll let the applicant come and speak.
There's no problem with the security? Have you passed this to the police department to have them ask? I don't want to see us create a problem with, I don't know, I'll have to ask them about lighting and other security aspects. I'll hold my questions for that.
Okay.
Any other questions from Mr. Metz?
Can you throw this picture you have, can you throw that up on the screen? I think it's in this discussion. There. Now let's start again. The request is for what exactly?
So U-Haul has permission to build self-storage facilities at this lot here, where the arrow is. Now, self-storage facilities are permitted within the zoning district based off of our contract. Now, the two variances requested is, one, for a reduction of the 100-foot setback from self-storage facilities from residential. We have residential here, which is on the very far south end of it. And then for the reduction of the fence, which would be along 2nd Avenue, and then on down along Verity. They would still, however, like to build a fence, an opaque fence with landscaping all the way down Cooper's Alley. So it would just be for the removal of the fence on 2nd Avenue and South Verity, and then for the reduction of self-storage facilities from being 100 feet from 221 Park Street to 25.
So in essence, what they want to do is put a fence up at their property line. To the west. Is that accurate?
Well, they have to, and they would like to as well, but yes.
Okay.
Delete the rest.
But they would not want to put one along Verity Parkway.
The code requires it, in other words, and they're willing to comply with the code, right? It's just that the code would normally say 100 feet, and there isn't 100 feet available.
Right.
Okay.
Is 221, excuse me,
No, you go ahead.
is 221 the only resident that it affects? Or is it the other ones there also?
So
They look about the same.
221 would be the closest. There might be a few others that would be within the 100 feet district. I think it's just 221, maybe. But I sent a surrounding neighbor notice to everybody off on Park Street, and we didn't hear any public response.
Go ahead, Jerry, I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was just going to say, the way I see this, that part of the request is a given, correct?
I think I would, I'm not sure what you mean by it's a given.
Code requirement on the backside.
The 50-foot to the west, the request to the west
Yes,
is a given, because it complies with code with the exception of the distance, which
Correct.
is not available.
correct.
So I'm saying, I'm asking my colleagues here, I see that as a given.
Okay.
That
I think part of that fence actually exists where the current property is used for renting out trailers and stuff. I think there's part of it there, and it's a chain link fence with some sort of inhibiting strips or something in there.
slats.
Slats, okay. So, and that's, I don't know how far that fence goes, but I think when I've been there and used rental equipment and there
But they're
seemed to be a
proposing
fence.
now that it will be an opaque fence running all the way to the street. Is that correct?
It'll be from Second Avenue all the way down to Girard, but I'll let the applicant
fine with me.
speak up
I don't have a problem.
on that.
Okay. That's good. I feel good about that. We've accomplished something.
Mr. Metz, would you go back to the slide where you show the history of this project? So there's a long timeline there. Obviously, way too much for us to take in right now, but what I was curious about was the number of units. While you mentioned that they had permission or some type of contract that was referenced going through this project, was there any discussion about, I know that I'll ask the applicant as well, but the scale of what they're proposing? It looked like in the rendering that there's a number of small buildings that they're going to put there, roughly 15 feet in height. Was there any discussion about that? Have they told us, what the scale of the project will look like once completed, or the number of the buildings that they're going to have there, storage units that are there?
When you say the scale, do you mean like,
Well, I only seen it from the rendering, the drawing. It has a number, looks like there's 1, 2, 3, maybe 3 or 4 different buildings that they're going to construct there. I wasn't sure is that pretty close to what we would see at the end of this project if it were approved?
I would like to let the applicant speak
Okay.
upon that.
Any other questions for Mr. Metz before we open the public hearing?
If I may.
Sure.
Mr. Metz, I know you may not be able to speak to this, but the intent of the code as far as fencing, is that more for aesthetics or is that more for security, in your opinion?
That's not something I'd be able to speak upon. Code was written back in 2018, or when that's the last time it was updated.
Okay. Well, I'll open the public hearing now. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Sir, were you wishing to speak? Yep. Yep. Go ahead and state your name and address for the record, and I'll swear you in.
Mark Quinn, 3628 Oxford Court, Erlanger, Kentucky.
You swear the testimony you're about to give to the board is the truth, whole truth, nothing but your...
I do.
Thank you.
So I don't want to give you too much information as far as going all the way back to what,
Yeah.
I'll give you the quick version of what we were trying to do versus what we were allowed to do. So our original recommendation, you may remember, some of you think were on the board at the time I presented the last time, we're going to build a U-Box warehouse there, which would hold our version of the pods, which is called U-Box. So, and it would be a steel building that was pretty tall, and staff wasn't really in support of that project. So we kind of put our project on hold. A lot of time passed while we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do with that lot. We purchased the lot from the city, and then with the plan of doing something with it, but it just wasn't gonna work. So we tabled that, and then there was some, back and forth with the city on what are you gonna do with it, or we're gonna take it back from you, because that was in the contract. If we don't develop it, it would go back to the city. And so we came up with another plan that would be feasible for us and hopefully be okay with the city. So we went back to staff and said, we're gonna, instead of building this large 4-story warehouse there, we'll build exterior drive-up access storage units. So we can use the property, it'll be developed, it'll be a nice product, we can pave the lot and make it nice. Of course, and some of you have probably driven by there where the homeless are setting up camp in the back lot there behind those houses, and we've taken those trees and that brush down to try to clean that up. We've had a couple of the businesses in the area say thank you for running those people off and cleaning up their back lot. So we've done that, and then, of course, now we have this project. So approximately about 70 units would be going in that back lot. And of course, part of what we're talking about today is the setback. So that's what we're talking about on the setback is more, if we go 100 feet setback from where we build the buildings, we can't do the project because we're just not gonna be able to put enough buildings on that lot to pay for itself in return. So the way we're asking is to have that setback moved back to 25 feet so that we can build more units up closer to the property line. So that's phase one. As far as the privacy fence goes, right now the chain link fence is allowed to stay. It's grandfathered in. Today, if somebody develops something in that part of town, a commercial property can't put the chain link fence back up. It'd have to be a little bit nicer fence, like a wood fence, something like that. So we've agreed to remove the chain link fence and return to put in a nice wooden privacy fence, 6 feet tall, along that backside. So it would shield us from the residential lots to the commercial lot. So they wouldn't have to see us, doing business out there or anybody else doing business in the parking lot while they're in their residence or in their backyards. Because I think those houses back up to a little alley there. So that would be a little bit nicer looking product and get rid of that chain link fence. It's kind of an eyesore, which I agree is not the nicest looking fence. So as far as security versus aesthetics, it's aesthetics for me. It's visibility, a shield, a buffer yard, whatever you want to call it, to keep us from being seen from the residential neighbor behind there. The fence, as far as in the front of the property, we of course want our product to be seen. So the security part of it for us is individually alarmed units. So every unit will have an individual alarm, and it'll be well lit at night with shields on the lights that would keep it from shining onto the neighbors or the residents on that back side. So we would make sure the lights are directional lighting that would shine just on our parking lot only, and no fencing in the front or side buffer there, mainly for visibility and advertising and that sort of thing. And I'll answer any questions you may have. I'm trying to think if there's something else we need to discuss. Staff seems like they're in support of this. We're going to build the buildings and put a fake brick around it, a faux brick, instead of the metal-looking buildings that you're probably familiar with our location up the street from there. We have another location just up the road. That's more of the metal buildings. At the time, that was allowed there. I wasn't in Cincinnati at the time, so I wasn't involved in that project, but I've been with U-Haul for a long time and did some of these projects in Dayton, Ohio. But that was allowed at the time. Now today, they don't want the metal building. They want more of a brick look. So we're proposing a faux brick wrap around all of those so that they would look a little bit more pleasing to the eye.
That goes to my question, actually, because, well, there's a lot of discussion about development in that area as close to the historic district, which we're trying to rebuild, and downtown. This is certainly within that area of development. That's why I was asking questions about the scale, 70 units now that we know, and also wanted to make certain that this iteration of the project had staff support.
Yeah.
So that's very important for my vote anyways, to make certain that is an acceptable, feasible project for the city. Okay.
And that's been kind of everywhere I've been. I've done a project in multiple cities in Dayton, Trotwood, Miamisburg, multiple projects. And normally staff, once you get staff's approval, you can get more people on.
It's nice to hear that it will not just be metal
Yeah.
buildings. That makes a big difference as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
And of course, it's going to cost us a little bit more.
It does, yeah.
We prefer to do it out of metal because of cost. So, and normally we can pass that savings on to the customer. So, who's going to pay for what we're going to do there is the customer. The Middletown residents are going to pay for every dollar we put back into that. We got to recoup it somewhere. So, usually comes from the customer.
I got a question or two. Do you expect 24-hour access to these buildings for people storing stuff, or is there?
Only if we grant it, and normally that's only for specific people. So normally the manager makes that decision. If there's an unusual circumstance that somebody has to have an early access or a late departure from there, we would allow that, but not for every customer that comes in. Normally they have to be in good standing and have some substantial reason why they need to come in and out at night.
How do they enter the property to get back there?
There's a curb cut, I believe, on that. There's a curb cut there that will come in.
Is it on the,
It's on the top right corner of your diagram there.
and you're gonna police that by, I see it there now.
Individually alarmed units, so,
I mean, as far as access in there, it's strictly by the honor system,
to get onto the
no
property.
gate.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, and you said you had lighting, which is, of course, great. How about a security cameras or anything like that?
Be security cameras, state-of-the-art DVR system, and individually alarmed units.
Do you intend to have any additional signage advertising the fact that you are going to have storage units available at such and such?
I don't anticipate any signage has been discussed, and I think that would have to go through council also to get additional signage added. Just so I can say that the orange doors are are our version of the sign, if that means anything, so.
I have a question. Am
Yes,
I reading the plans right here, that in front of that fence in the back, you're also gonna have either bushes or trees, it looks like?
The trees have already been added, they're there now.
Okay,
So yeah, they would remain. The fence would be on the residential side of the landscaping buffer you see in the photo there.
so the one last thing, it's more of a comment, I guess, than a question. I'm assuming that this is gonna look pretty much just like the one up on Verity, other than this will have a brick wrap on it.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
I'm uncomfortable that you, for some reason, you don't want to put fencing on Verity Parkway and around the property to secure it from just people walking or camping in there or whatever. It's obvious that you can't see everything from the street, at least Verity. And you've had people and stuff in the past that have camped there or whatever you want to call it, and they're staged in there. I don't know, I feel safe, my wife coming in there, and there's places where people could be. That's why I would encourage a chain link fence that's, you can see through it, so you can see what you've got in there, and as other storage units around town, it seems to be, like, I don't know if a standard is true, but it seems to be something that people have accepted.
They have in the past. It's interesting that you say that because a lot of the places we're purchasing now throughout the state of Ohio is they want the fencing removed. And they want the barbed wire removed. I'm trying to purchase a property currently in Springdale. It's got barbed wire all around it. And one of the conditions was we would remove the barbed wire, or we're not allowed to purchase it. So I understand what you're saying. It's just the industry standard today is different than it was 20 years ago. So these units 20 years ago, yeah, there'd been fence, a gate, maybe a card swipe to get in the gate. But today's standards is, if you go to 90% of this exterior storage places that are built in the last 5 to 10 years, they're all going to be open. And it's not for everybody. Like you said, your wife may not want that exterior unit, but we would have an interior unit that we currently already have there that she could pull up, get out of her vehicle, slide her card, and walk straight in, and no one would be able to enter the building behind her unless they had an access card or a code. And in our new properties, if we build ground up, we have drive-in access. So you pull up, you hit your garage door opener that we give you, and the door opens, you drive inside, you hit the door again, it closes down behind you. In this case, obviously, this is a project that's just not as large, but kind of the same idea as the security part. But there are going to be cameras all over. Like I said, the security's pretty good. And we've ran off the homeless that been camping there now, and we don't have, a fence there now currently. So I think we could still run off.
Regarding the fencing, did staff give any feedback in terms of what, for feasibility of this project, saying, giving it the green light or giving it support? Did they indicate certain preference in terms of what they may be looking at from a development standpoint?
Yeah, well, one of them was that they had to have the brick around it, so we agreed to that. And then they had to have the fence in the back, the privacy fence. And then, of course, they sent me what type of fence they wanted with the wood and a nice-looking privacy fence, 6 feet in height. So, and to remove the existing chain link fence that's there now, that's what staff wanted, because you can't put a chain link fence up there, from what I understand. Currently, if we wanted to put a chain link fence, they would tell us no. It has to be a wooden fence. So we would remove that fence. That was kind of a concession of, they said, if you can do this for us, you know, I think the board will be pleased with letting you have no fence in the front and the setback not being 100 feet, that we could get away with a 25-foot setback. So kind of give and take a little bit, so.
Okay.
All right.
Any
It
other-
is give and take. If you're, I mean, as long as you realize, doesn't mean they can't come in with crowbars, brick windows and mirrors
Yeah,
and
we-
skills and.
We have 70 or 80 units sitting right up the street, exterior, no fence,
Okay.
less than a mile.
You'll have it all on tape, you can watch it.
Yeah, and you're right, yeah, and even the tapes don't help you a lot of times. Believe me, I've been doing this for 30 years now, so I got a lot of
That's the
experience.
thing, I mean,
It's-
you know, if it's built into your profit mode
Yes,
and
sir.
risk assessment.
And I get what you're saying. Somebody wants to go in there and with a, crowbar and pry the door open, they're gonna get in. We have insurance for all that kind of thing for the customer if they wanna, file a claim, police report, whatever, but we don't have a whole lot of break-ins at the other location. I mean, I honestly can't tell you the last time we've had a break-in there. So,
We'll stop
everybody gets
now.
their own.
We'll stop now, we won't change it anymore.
Well, everybody gets their own disc lock, so we recommend they put a disc lock on the unit, which is very hard to cut with bolt cutters. I don't know if you're familiar with a disc lock, but normally if you're gonna take those off, there's a special way you have to drill it out, and if you mess up drilling it out, it normally locks the lock up. You can't get it off. Of course, if they wanna get in there, they could run a truck through it, right, or, so if they went in there bad enough, they'll get in there.
I think your project will help the neighborhood, because they probably do need storage that's safe and secure, so in that part of it, I don't have an issue at all. Just my gut feel is that I would protect it, but.
I appreciate it.
Done it, okay.
Any other questions from Mr. Quinn?
Yeah, is there a 24-hour management there?
There's not. No. Now, if alarm goes off, it goes to our call center. So if somebody opens a door that didn't disarm, because they have a card swipe they'll use on the machine outside. So they'll hit the card swipe or type in a code, it'll disarm their unit. If they go to their unit and don't disarm and open the door up, it's gonna set the alarm off. And then our 24/7 security out in Phoenix, Arizona, somebody will see that, they call the manager and say, I've got them on camera right now, there's somebody in the parking lot, looks like they're breaking into a unit, or it looks like just a customer that's getting a few things out, but you may want to run up there and see what's going on. Then the manager has the option of driving up there and saying, hey, you got to slide your card, why didn't you slide your card, or what are you doing on the parking lot, why are you here? And the other option is we could send the police, but I usually don't like doing that because of false alarms and things of that nature.
But if you got somebody on camera, it's not necessarily a false alarm.
No, but it could be somebody that's not supposed to be on the lot, yeah, so, yeah. Or they are supposed to be on the lot, they just didn't understand the card swipe or code.
To clarify, on the north side, on Second, additional fencing there would need to be the opaque privacy fencing?
No fencing on the north side.
Right, but if there would be, would it have to follow the same
Yes,
guidelines
sir.
as the back?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I believe this is gonna change a little bit from engineering that we're working on. That top building you see there on the north is probably gonna go away because there's a retention area there based on engineering drawings and stuff like that. So we're gonna lose, 10, 12 units on that top corner. So that'd put us down to like 60 instead of 70.
Well, I noticed that the barrier is a little removed from the very end, so
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time tonight.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the variance, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the proposed changes, please come forward. Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. We'll move to deliberations at this point. So, at this point, I think we should probably be clear on what we're being asked in terms of the variance. Mr. Messi, you want to state that, or I'll give it a shot here,
Yeah.
either way? Okay.
I can read it again. So the two variances requested are for a reduction in the setback from a residential neighborhood from 100 feet to 25 feet, and for the construction of self-storage units without a fence surrounding the entirety of the property. Now, the fence would still be along the western half, just not along Second Avenue or South Verity.
Any comments about the proposed variance? None?
I move that we accept the application as presented by Mr. Metz.
Second.
Gary Gross,
Yes.
Jim Hall,
Yes.
Todd Moore,
Yes.
Chris Frambergy,
Yes.
Jerry Heidenreich,
Yes.
Stefan Wanamaker.
Yes.
Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Yep, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this moves us to case number 223, a request by applicant Scott Bunch with Big E Coffee for approval of an area and dimensional variance for the property located at 3593 South Dixie Highway. Mr. Metz.
Thank you. So the property is zoned B2, Community Business District. The variance requested is for the removal of a stacking lane curb where the Middletown Development Code states when stacking lanes are separated from other stacking lanes, bypass lanes, or from other site areas, the separation shall be by means of a raised concrete median, concrete curb, or landscaping. The image you see below is quite old. It's from 2015. It's from Google Maps. So the property is zoned B2 Community Business District. The purpose of the B2 Community Business District is to provide for areas of the city that will contain a wide variety of commercial and office uses to meet the needs of the city and region that require access to major arterial streets and are in close proximity to major residential neighborhoods. The property in question is the furthest left tenant space in the strip mall. It's approximately right here. This is where the new Big B Coffee will go. I want to back up for just 1 second. I want to ensure that it's understood that the variance request is not for Big B Coffee to actually take the tenant space. They are permitted by right to be there. It is solely for a concrete curb that would have to be separating their drive-through lane that they are wanting to build on the property and the bypass lane. The bypass lane is the lane that passes your drive-through, and your drive-through lane is the drive-through lane that goes up to order and get the food or coffee in this circumstance. Here you'll see the image to the right indicating the bypass lane as well as the drive-through lane. Instead of the concrete median, the applicant has proposed painted lines that you can see here on the image. On the next slide, I have the image. It's blown up. It's a little bit larger, so you can get a better visual on that. But the Middletown Development Code, Chapter 1218.05, Vehicle Stacking Space Requirements, B2, states, when stacking lanes are separated from other stacking lanes, bypass lanes from other site areas, the separation shall be by means of a raised concrete median, concrete curb, or landscaping. So once again, the concrete curb would have to go approximately right through here, right where the dotted line is. It does not have to be as large as this is. Concrete curbs, when developed with vehicle stacking spaces, would be in consultation between the zoning code administrator, which would be myself, and the city engineer, which we currently do not have. Additionally, here is the site plan provided by the applicant. You can see where Big B Coffee is. You can see where the drive-through lane would be. Per the Middletown Development Code, the requirement for legal notice for variance requests, meeting notice letters for the proposed variance were sent to all property owners contiguous and directly across the street or public right-of-way. No comments were received. Would you like me to read the A&D variance review criteria again?
Does anyone need the comments again for the review criteria? It's okay, Mr.
Yeah.
And then I'll read the appeals. Any person or entity claiming to be injured or aggrieved by any final action of the Board of Zoning Appeals has the right to appeal the decision. The Court of Common Pleas as provided in Ohio Revised Code Chapters 2505 and 2506. Do you have any questions for me? The applicant is present.
Okay. I will open the public hearing. Yes, sir. Please state your name and address for the record.
Scott Bunch.
You swear the testimony I have to give to the board is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
Hey, folks, how you doing?
Doing great.
Probably gonna be a little nervous here. I'm not used to this kind of thing. I know coffee, I don't know board meetings here. So the reason we want to build this without a curb, the primary reason is, as you can see at the top, with that curb that comes around, like how you have to round around the drive-through, it leaves us about 12 feet of space, which is, I mean, it's plenty of space, but we were just a little bit concerned that if a fire truck needed to get around there in a hurry, or it might be a little tight. So that's why we wanted to just remove that curb, and that would allow 24 feet of easy pass through. The other reason, as you can see, we're actually going to be moving our dumpster area to the northwest of that property, and it'll allow easy access for the trash truck to get in and out and come out around. Keep in mind that you'll see that menu board. There still will be bollards in place to protect that. But aside from that, several other businesses are functioning perfectly fine without curbs around there. In Middletown, they just have painted lines, which is exactly what we would like to do. And the final reason is because if I put a tall curb in there, I really don't want my customers to be upset, because once they get into that drive-through, they're going to be locked in. If they have a family emergency, if they have something going on where they need to exit my drive-through, I want them to easily be able to do that. And with a curb in place, they won't be able to do that. Open for questions. Go ahead.
You show parking there to the left of where the drive-through is. On your drawing, I thought they said that you were gonna remove those parking spots. Is that?
So the parking spaces that are there to the left, those will remain. There actually are parking spaces. I'm adding a drive-through window. So against the building, there are currently parking spaces, and we will be removing those, which we will still meet the minimum parking for a multi-unit facility with those removed.
I know that there was some questions about this concept of stacking lanes. Would you like to just share a few comments about that? Are you comfortable doing that, or is that a question for Mr. Metz? The question really is about, will there be indicators? You know, you've suggested here one solution or alternative to having the concrete. You would have, this area would be marked as an area for the drive-through, and you can see that in the rendering here. But in terms of just the traffic flow and how these lanes are stacked, will there be other indicators for Biggity Coffee as you enter into the parking lot from behind, or how will that look once this is in practice?
So there will be signage, directional signage, I assume. There will be directional signage to get the customer to the drive-through lane, yes.
Okay.
Based on your experience, is there traffic flow peaks and valleys as far as people coming at various times in the day? For instance, when they're driving to work, they're going to run in there and get a cup of coffee and get in line. Do you have any studies as far as traffic flow on a particular 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning or something?
Absolutely. So I actually operate a store in Springboro, Ohio. My wife and I opened it last February. We're going to be celebrating our 1-year anniversary of the store. So judging from that, I actually expect similar traffic flow, and from 9 to 11 will be our busiest time. Afternoon, it really starts to dip down, where I could probably count on one hand how many times that stacking lane was filled up afternoon. I mean, people generally just don't drink coffee afternoon. There's a few crazy ones out there.
I think that's one of the questions I had, and I speak to both of you on this. This property, I know when we had the Time Warner situation in there, getting out of there could be quite a chore, because, I mean, I don't know if there's been any consideration. The 9 to 11 time period means something to me, okay, because my concern would have been the traffic flow. we have a traffic light. If you go down below Sonic, there is a traffic light there, which is a very good thing. To come straight out of this, in front of this strip center, sometimes people, you have a heck of a time getting out, and you won't get out if you intend to turn left. I mean, you simply have to go down that traffic light.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how much consideration had been given that, even by you, before you came to set up your business.
Yes, I did look at that, and honestly, I sat in that further, the southeast parking spot. I sat there for several hours, for several days, just looking at flow and looking at traffic patterns.
Okay.
And I do acknowledge that if somebody were to go out and try to turn left, it will be complicated. The good thing is to access the highway, which is generally where my customers are going to be doing. They're going to be getting a cup of coffee, and they're going to go out, they're going to turn right, and then they're going to hit the highway. So I definitely thought about that, and I acknowledge your concern, but that there is access at the light if necessary.
Well, my concern is my vote and what it might do. Okay.
I'd like to pick up on what you're saying. I think entrance into that part is a problem as well. I happen to live down that street, and I know if I'm coming up Roosevelt and I turn left there, there's people that will, I don't know if it's illegal or not, but they'll want to turn in that entrance that you're talking about as an exit too. And what happens is you got an arrow that comes and allows you to turn left on there, and there's actually 2 lanes that turn left from Roosevelt onto Dixie Highway, and that left lane can get backed up to where I've been stuck on Roosevelt because they line up to turn left, and you can't turn left because of the traffic that's going south on Dixie Highway, and it's backed up and actually blocks access to that entrance. And they're not smart enough to go down to the light or there's something and turn left and come into the traffic. So I don't know that it's your problem, but it's the city's problem, because that's going to cause, or that can cause some traffic incidents, especially if you're increasing the amount of people turning in to get your coffee. I've got a suggestion that the city might consider, the traffic engineer might consider putting those 2-foot yellow flexible posts along that, whatever yellow lines you got there that would prevent a person from turning left from Dixie Highway into that entrance.
That's an excellent consideration.
Yeah, I know that it's an issue. If you have traffic increasing in there, that's gonna cause a problem. And to your point, I don't know if that, what's the name of the pizza place there, that they have a window too on that setup.
Yeah.
And like you said, leaving the property, you're gonna be potentially blocking people from getting to that pizza entrance or pizza window or whatever it is. So I just think, I don't know what the answer is there, other than I'd ask the city to look at it from a standpoint of putting some sort of flexible, preventing people from turning left there and making it more likely that they'll go to the light that's properly set up down there outside of Sonic's to let people come in that way.
I just say heads up, Mr. Metz.
Yeah, accessing from that light at Sonic is extremely easy. It makes life a lot
If people would use it, and some do, but you just have to sit there. If you sat there 2 hours, you're bound to see people stopping on South Dixie Highway, wanting to turn left into that immediate entrance there. And that's always causes a problem.
Well, I've thought for years that they ought to just close that entrance up there, so you can't get in or out there, and you have to go down Sonic.
I just wonder if there's a right-of-way, I think as a separate property. Is there a formal right-of-way in place?
Yeah, that's.
I don't know, but,
Private property.
yeah.
Well, that's my concern. I
Yes,
think
sir.
what you're doing is great,
Thank you.
but we got an issue with.
We know this doesn't have anything directly to do with you, but
Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the variance, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the variance, please come forward. Okay, seeing none, I will now close the public hearing. Well, the question about the right-of-way, those sorts of things, I'd be interested. In this particular case, we're being asked just to look narrowly at whether or not
Exactly.
we're in favor. I typically in BZA decisions, I'm not as familiar with us attaching any type of conditions on that, or subject to engineering, those types of comments. I'd need a little feedback on that, because I'm more familiar with that with Planning Commission, but not necessarily in BZA or area and dimensional.
You still have the same rights as planning commission on that. You can approve with modifications, or deny. But when you do approve or when you do deny or make any type of recommendation, you need to, it'd be best to quote the review criteria. So the review criteria that's available, so, I approve based off review criteria A, et cetera, and this is the reason why. And if you were going to do approve with modification, you'd kind of explain why, but
I don't know that I would want to even attempt to stipulate anything,
Right.
Relative to the traffic thing, but I think it would be nice if you accepted from us the comments, attach that as a concern and consideration. And Jerry's point about those flexible things in the street, I don't know the proper term for them. That's an excellent suggestion to be considered. It really is.
that is something I can share with our Public Works Department. Traffic impact studies, such as what essentially is what you would be requesting, is handled through Public Works, and generally
Right.
they, do a third-party contract, and
It may not rear its ugly head right away,
Right.
but when the word gets out that, man, there's a new coffee house, by golly, it may.
Yeah, I've never understood why that curb cut is where it is, because isn't it too close to the intersection?
Yeah,
it's a great question for a Department of Transportation engineers.
We dropped the ball on that somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know how that got approved.
Was that building built before it was annexed?
Well, that's a good point.
Might have been.
Maybe.
That was in the early 90s.
Might have been Franklin Township then.
That's a good point, Jim.
So looking at the variance itself, what we're really looking at here is that we would question is whether or not that we want to accept the variance, waiving that concrete, accepting that substitution that's presented here. Looking for some feedback from,
The application as presented. Is that
I
it,
move
Jim?
that we accept the variance.
I will second that.
okay. All right, well, Mr. Metz, did you note who made the motion and second on that one?
I'm sorry, could you say it
Did
one
you,
more time?
did you, I wanted to make certain that we also, before we move, referencing the review criteria,
Based on what criteria?
I was going to make a recommendation on review criteria. If you look at number 6 and number 9, so whether, the variance would adversely affect, and then the spirit and intent, if you can see that on page 2, I guess. But if there's others that would like to make suggestions, please do, but just so that we have something in the record.
Based on number 9, whether the spirit and intent behind the code requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by granting it. I mean, in lieu of a curb, he's gonna paint the
Well, essentially,
Drive-through.
what we're saying there is by doing this, there's no harm that's going to be done. So we can still maintain the spirit and intent of the code, but allow a reasonable variance to proceed.
I think number 6 kind of sums it up. It's
Okay.
like the applicant said, what if a fire truck had to get through there, or even that garbage truck where the dumpster is, it's going to be tight.
I think the excessive length of that curbing would cause problems, as you
Yeah.
stated.
Yeah.
Number 6 it is then. Okay,
6 and 9.
9 as well,
okay, 6 and 9,
very applicable.
okay.
Stefan?
Oh, I was saying that I believe item 9 as well, is still the intent of the code. I'm still following that pretty well, so I'm just agreeing
Yep.
with that.
I'm just reading roll right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
For your vote.
apologize. Yes.
Yes. Jerry Heidenreich,
Yes.
Christopher Ambergy,
Yes.
Todd Moore,
Yes.
Jim Hall,
Yes.
and Gary Gross.
Yes.
Yeah, well, congratulations. I'll be your customer that shows up at 2 o'clock for coffee. Okay, that sounds good. I did want to make a comment for old or new business. I was going to ask if we could, as we were making our decision in the first case, we didn't give, this is an oversight on my behalf, we didn't state, for the record, we didn't state a hardship. And if we could, without objection, could we talk for a moment just to make certain, in this particular case, this first case, list of hardship criteria. Is there any suggestions there? Obviously, I had number 9. I think here, spirit and intent of the code, there's a long history of development there. It maintains the B3 character, I think, is what the intent would be. If you're comfortable with number 9, or if there's other suggestions.
Hardship is exact because we don't have 100 feet.
But any comments there for what we'd like to list in the criteria? Mr. Gross, anything?
No, that sounds like a good reason.
Okay, so if we could just enter that in as a revision. Okay,
Absolutely.
okay. Any other comments for old or new business?
I move that we delay the election of officers until the following meeting.
Okay. It brings us to adjournment. Thank you, everyone.
We have to vote on it?
Yeah, we're gonna, I don't think we have to vote on the delay, do we? No, okay.
Okay.
All those in favor of adjournment say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Thank you so much.
All right.
Mr. Ambergy, would you like to sign?
You can't tell us why they put a fence around the place. You don't have any reason why they wanted a fence around it.
It's a good for self-storage.
Yeah.
It's required in the code for all self-storage facilities to have a fence.
Why?
Why? Could be for aesthetics, could be for safety, could be for plethora of things, but I don't feel